Hello everybody and welcome back to Typical City. I feel like nothing but bad news lately, nothing but bad headlines for Manchester City fans, and I don't think that's a coincidence either, because I think the media very much has it in for Manchester City, unfortunately, with all of the transfer rumours being big profile players that are leaving the football club and very few coming in, as if Manchester City would operate like that. There is very little logic to the media's approach to these headlines, not really thinking them through thoroughly, with the likes of Rodri being linked to Real Madrid a week ago just because Carvajal said something. I'd like you to play for Real Madrid. Oh, in that case, Rodri's going to Real Madrid. Edison's off to Saudi. De Bruyne was off to Saudi for what we were charging 100 million. Apparently that's gone in the bin now, and Pep himself has said, nope, absolute false news. No news here, move on. Now, Alvarez, as well as others, by the way, I can't even remember them all, there's that bloody many of them, but Alvarez is the most recent one, which there is some possibility of logic to this because of how happy the player could be with the circumstances, but for me, it's just a frustrating scenario. And I don't feel like we've seen the best of Alvarez yet. I feel like we've seen, nearly 2 years of him, and he's been a very, very good signing, very, very capable player. And an integral part to the first half of our season last season. It dwindled a little bit, it wilted out a little bit towards the end of last season, and I'll get onto his minutes, by the way, which is a real indication of why there may be some logic to this. There may be some truth behind his personal feelings, as well as the fact that Pep Guardiola has been reported to be furious at the idea that the club have allowed him to join the Argentinian Olympic team, which is interesting considering he's just finished playing football with Argentina for Copa America. Now he's off to the Olympics. So virtually no pre-season with Manchester City, which if he wants to come to Manchester City and get minutes, you aren't going to be starting for Manchester City at the beginning of the season if you've not been involved in pre-season. So the argument that he wants Manchester City to give him minutes, you aren't going to get them if you're disappearing too often and having no pre-season. Now that's his choice. If he prioritises Argentina, fair play to him. That's his decision. But you can't get the best of both worlds. Now, I know these players, they are unbelievable athletes and they can do ridiculous minutes, but the number of matches and the football that Alvarez played last season was astronomical when you incorporate Argentina into that as well. So he's playing a lot of football. His argument, I think, is going to be the big games. Where was I in the big games? In the final stages of last season, in the Premier League, as well as that 2 legs against Real Madrid as well. And I'll bring up the minutes for you in a minute. But the reports are City have set their price now, which I think is key to this. I think finally City are setting some sort of authority to the situation. And I think a lot of the media have deluded themselves into thinking that just because City have once upon a time sold players for a fair fee, not astronomical and not cheap. I mean, at the time, now, yes, in hindsight, Cole Palmer for 45 million was a bargain for Chelsea. That wasn't to be known at the time, though. At the time, it was probably arguably a little bit cheap. But we've sold other players for very reasonable fees. You know, for Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus. What have they done? You know, what have they done at Arsenal? We've made money on them, as well as they've not gone on to be a major threat to us. They've certainly improved Arsenal, but they didn't go on to seriously damage us. And we can't own every player in the world. We have to let some players go. If they're not getting the minutes at City because they're not good enough, then they're not good enough. That's the facts. That's the cold, hard nature. The facts of Manchester City is you have to be creme de la creme, I'm afraid. You can't be like nearly there. You have to be there, you know, top of the top, best of the best. And I think Alvarez, for me, I feel like he's close to that. But the one thing City doing in setting their price, which is a reported £60 million plus nearly £17 million add-ons will be included in the fee, if that was to be expected. I mean, how long that would be spread over, I'm not too sure. But, I mean, 77 million in total would be the total fee that we could receive for Alvarez. Again, fair for me. You're talking about a World Cup winner. And he's got something that is an incredibly rare commodity that the world is searching for. Every football club is searching for the commodity that is goals and goal contributions. A player that can assist and a player that can score goals. Alvarez is that man. He is absolutely that man for you, and he works his socks off. He's an absolutely quality player. And he's been misused quite frequently at Manchester City, which I feel from a City fan's perspective, I'm frustrated at the idea of losing Alvarez, because it's very much a like what could have been if it happens. What if? Like, what if we played him for 10 games in a row as centre forward? But that means 10 games in a row, Erling Haaland is not playing as centre forward. So the give and take is there, and I mean, there are some people that I know, still City fans as well, that would suggest playing Alvarez ahead of Haaland because of what Alvarez offers outside of his goals. But for me, I think if the tactics very much seem like we're focusing on implementing our players to play in a way that suits Erling Haaland, with the signing of Savio and Doku. Oscar Bobb is very much fitting that bill, and what a performance he put in against Celtic yesterday with a goal and 2 assists. Really good from Oscar Bobb. Again, someone that yesterday, in fact, I was apologising for not mentioning him enough before the Celtic game, saying that this guy's a quality player and he's going to do things. The same evening, he goes and does things. So I believe there's a player there that City absolutely need to keep as well. He's another one that's being linked with another move away from the club. Again, typical headlines about Manchester City. But the price of 77 million is interesting because Chelsea are reportedly interested. Atletico Madrid are probably priced out with that fee, for me. Barcelona, again, another linked club. Are they priced out with a £77 million fee? I would think so. Chelsea could possibly afford it, but they've got PSR to worry about, having nearly already spent £100 million already this summer on 7 signings, with the likes of Dewsbury Hall and Estevao Willian coming in, and Kellyman coming in at Chelsea. Top quality players, well, promising players at Chelsea, but the point is they spent a lot of money already, nearly getting close to 100 million. You slap another 77 million on that, and Chelsea are continuing to spend and getting very dangerously close to the limitations of PSR. So will they be able to break the bank? And it's not like City are no mugs. You know, we've not stood in the way of players when it makes sense as well. It doesn't have to be, we are not a charity. You know, it's not a handout situation. It's a case of, you don't want to play, no worries. We'll sell you for 20 million. We'll sell you for what we paid for you. And just because City know what they're doing and they went and spent 14 million on this promising superstar Argentinian wonder kid, Alvarez, doesn't mean we have to sell him for a similar fee. We did our homework. We did the dirty, grimy scouting and went into the depths of football to find this superstar, bought him on the cheap, and now people think we've got to sell him on the cheap. Fuck off. No, cough it up, mate. 77 million. And I think that's incredibly fair as well. I'd be arguing for closer to 90. It's 90 million euros. I'm saying 90 million pounds, mate. That's what I think City should be asking for. But still, he's just signed a 1-year contract extension in 2023, March 2023, that keeps him at the club until 2028. So again, cough it up, mate. Sorry. You've got to pay. And as much as City do allow players to leave, it's got to make sense. You know, it's not illogical. It's not a free revolving door where players come and players go. We are not operating like that. And the media has deluded themselves into thinking that we are like that. And they're going to get a rude awakening when very little players leave the club. How many players were linked away from the club last season? So many. So many. And there was only one surprise package in the end, and that was Cole Palmer, really. That was the big one. The ones that we already knew about, the Gundogan, who was already planned, Laporte was already planned as well. Surprise departures. That's not like City. We don't do surprise departures. It's usually very well orchestrated, all the comings and goings. You know, and especially the goings. Comings, not as easy to orchestrate because you've got to handle the idea of other clubs. But when you're the owner of a player, you have the final say. So City will absolutely be controlling the situation, no doubt. But let's have a quick look at Alvarez's stats for last season to get some sort of indication of why he might be unhappy at Manchester City. But as you can see, 54 appearances. He's playing football for Manchester City. You know, he's playing 3,400 minutes, decent. 39 of those 54 appearances were starts. So he was starting. A lot of that, yes, was in the absence of Kevin De Bruyne while he was injured in the first half of the season. But he did a good job. He did a very good job. Substitutions off the pitch in those 54 appearances is why you might start to get a little bit closer to why he's unhappy. But again, 19 goals, 13 assists, 32 goal contributions from Julian Alvarez is absolutely sensational. Really is. It really, really is. And I'm totally impressed by the guy, and I feel like a lot of City fans are quite prepared to see the back of him. I think we would regret that. It's just a case of where would you fit him? Going deeper into the minutes as to why he might not play. He played a total of 17 minutes in the Premier League in the final 4 games of last season. When City really needed to be at our best, we didn't call on Julian Alvarez. In those final 4 games, he came on for like a minute against Spurs. In the 90th minute, he came on for 1 minute against Spurs. The game before that, he played 8 minutes. The game before that, he played 8 minutes. And in the final game of the season, he played 0 minutes against West Ham, where we finally won the league. So 17 minutes in your final 4 games of the season, when you really want to be involved as much as possible as well, is probably why he probably finished the season with a little bit of a sour taste in his mouth. Now, if City can offer him those minutes, then fine. I think that would be keep him happy, at least. But he's got the Olympics now, so he's not going to get a pre-season, as I've already said. The pre-season's minimal. The Olympics finish. I don't know when the actual football campaign starts within the Olympics, but I know the whole Olympics themselves finish on the 11th of August. We're playing in the Community Shield on the 10th of August. So there's going to be some crossover there. The transfer window doesn't shut until the 30th of August. So should he finish the Olympics on the 11th of August, if that's when the football is and Argentina make it to the final, which they have every chance of doing, there's going to be that few weeks where Alvarez could still angle for a move out of the football club. Now, another 2 games that I think is a same reason why he might be annoyed was in the Champions League. Again, an example of him not being called upon when we really, really are we need our best players. And therefore, he's not being called upon, so he might not feel like one of our best players. In the Real Madrid, 2 legs, 33 minutes. The first leg, he played 3 minutes, coming on for the final 3 minutes, and then he came on for extra time in the second leg. Again, not enough for a player of Alvarez's calibre and someone who's a World Cup winner, going away to Copa America, and he was rested for 1 game. He played the Copa America final, the full game, which they won. That's why he's getting the taste of minutes in an Argentinian shirt. Whereas in a City shirt, he played for a huge portion of the season, and it was a valuable asset for Manchester City in those first 2/3 of the season. Final third, he wilted a little bit, didn't he? And that's, I think, where the sour taste is coming from. Now, for me, Eberechi Eze is another player that was going to get resurfaced as a link to Manchester City because of Alvarez. If Alvarez was to leave, Eze makes sense for me, because I think Alvarez has been very much used in that De Bruyne role, or in that floating role, that little false 9, tucking in behind Haaland a little bit. Eze can do that. The question is, though, if you were to let Alvarez go, we've literally only got one out-and-out centre-forward then at the club in Erling Haaland. We know we've got players that can play in that role, but we'd have to revert to a different system, which is always the case, because Erling Haaland is a very unique type of player. Even when Alvarez is there, it's a different system, a different style of play Manchester City have to employ on the pitch, because Haaland's a unique person. He's a unique player that you have to play to his strengths. Whereas Alvarez, similar to Aguero, Oscar Bob can play in that position. He played last season as a centre-forward, strong in those positions, similar, a little bit more agile, similar to Alvarez. You've got Foden, who can also do it. You know, there's numerous players that could play as a false 9 and have already played as a false 9 at Manchester City that could cover for Erling Haaland. But you sell Alvarez and you lose Haaland for 2 months of injury, let's say, hypothetically. That's a nightmare scenario, because the goals is what goes missing then. The players can play in those positions, but will they deliver the goals that an Alvarez will as a number 9? And Haaland, we already know, definitely delivers as a number 9. It's a really interesting subject for me, and one, I feel he will stay. That's my ultimate take in this. I feel like Alvarez will stay. City won't let him go, and it's all very much dependent on the clubs that want to buy him. Cough it up, mate. City have got a contract until 2028. 77 million is an incredibly fair fee. If you want him, you pay up. Let me know your thoughts, Blues, in the comments below. Like and subscribe to Typical City, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City now.